Good afternoon, everyone. This first day of Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2017 is underway. Thanks for tuning in on marinesanctuary.org/OceansLIVE. I'm Kate Thompson, host of Capitol Hill Ocean Talk. There are so many of us in the world that it can be easy to assume that our own individual actions simply don't make a difference. But every change has to start somewhere. This afternoon, we'll be exploring efforts that started with just a few people and then swept across the nation. Joining me today in the studio is Lori Arguelles, Executive Director of the Alice Ferguson Foundation. As the foundation's lead, Lori promotes student academic achievement and environmental stewardship through personal connections to the natural world. We'll learn how the Alice Ferguson Foundation is cleaning up debris right here in the D.C. area. I'm also joined by Alexis Villari-Orton, Program Associate for the Ocean Foundation. Alexis serves as Project Manager for the Ocean Foundation's International Ocean Acidification Initiative and is an expert in the impacts of ocean acidification on seafood. Also with us in the studio is Sarah Winter-Whelan, Co-Director of the Healthy Oceans Coalition. With Sarah's leadership, the Healthy Oceans Coalition supported the movement that created the National Ocean Policy. Last, but certainly not least, I'm excited to have Mia DeMeza with us today. Mia is the Executive Director of Earth Echo International, which was founded by Philippe and Alexandra Cousteau and inspires young people worldwide to act now for a sustainable future. Don't forget to be part of our conversation. You can tweet us questions using hashtag #CHOW2017 and we'll answer the questions right here live. So ladies, thank you so much. I have a beautiful panel of women this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me today in the studio. So Mia, Earth Echo was founded by Philippe and Alexandra Cousteau, grandchildren of Jacques Cousteau. What does Earth Echo mean, and why did they start this nonprofit?
So Philippe and Alexandra decided they really wanted to engage young people in the conversation about environmental sustainability because they found that even as they got older, they started the organization when they were very young, but as they got older, they were still the youngest people in the room, and they realized that that wasn't great because they were in their 20s and then their later 20s and their 30s, and they really wanted to provide resources for the next generation to engage in the conversation. So that's what we do. And when we started the organization earlier on, our messaging has evolved a little bit, but we talked a lot about how everything you do makes a difference. And what's your Earth Echo? And the idea behind that was that every action that you take has an echo, has a reverberation, right? So make sure that you take an action that has a positive consequence as opposed to a negative one. So that's where the title came from.
So you specifically talked about youth and the importance of youth in your mission. Can you tell us a little about the Youth Leadership Council and also your Earth Echo expeditions?
Sure. So Youth Leadership Council was started just last year in 2015, and it's 15 young people from across the United States who have come together to advise Earth Echo on our programming, and you can see all of their beautiful faces right there. Well, you can see 8 of them. There are 15 of them. They advise Earth Echo on our programming, and then they really help to spread the word about the work and take the work back to their own community to start with, and then globally. So just in November, they did their first big campaign as a group, and it was called 3T4E, and that stands for 3 pieces of trash for the earth. And they asked everybody to pick up 3 pieces of trash and just take a picture and post it on social media. So it was super simple, and they engaged over 650,000 social media accounts, and they reached over 6 continents. So they had a huge impact of people really paying attention and taking a very simple action to help the earth. So that was their first, and then they will be doing different campaigns along the way. So that's fantastic.
Very, very cool. I actually recognized one of the faces on your council. That's Hannah McDonald.
Yes.
She actually started her volunteer work when she was in high school at the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. She did our Ocean for Life program. I believe she's now a Hauling Scholar. She's just one of those exceptional people, for sure.
And she's just one of, she is a perfect example of what this group is like. Amazing leaders in their own community who have now come together to really elevate some of the issues and to work globally.
So speaking of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, I just have to say, Lori Arguelles and I, we have a background. It's a good background, wonderful history together. But we actually, at the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, when it was very first designated back in 2000, in 2001 that summer, we started the very first Tall Ships Festival, and I believe we have a photo of it. And Lori, you still look great, by the way. Look at it, there you are. Yes, 2001. It was pouring rain.
Well, thank God for hoods. That's all I can say.
Yes, right. So anyway, just a little blast from the past. But now you are actually with the Alice Ferguson Foundation. Can you tell us a little about your mission at the foundation?
Absolutely. And I just love, well, Mia and I have had the pleasure of working together for a while now. And, you know, the focus on youth is really what we have at the foundation as well. So our mission is really to connect people to the natural world, to sustainable and regenerative agricultural practices, and to the cultural heritage of their local watershed. And over the 60+ years that we've been in business, we have served nearly 500,000 students from the Washington, D.C. metro area at our working farm, which is also our environmental education campus on the banks of the Potomac River right across from Mount Vernon. And so our education programs on site really help people understand things like, where does their food come from? And where does their trash go afterward? We're located in a spot on the river. Takes a pretty big bend if you know the Washington, D.C. area, right below the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. And so water's a great conveyor of lots of things, right? And so that includes trash, for better or worse. So as children were coming to do the habitat hike along our shoreline, every kid gets to learn about where their food comes from, and every kid gets to do a habitat hike. And these are some pictures from not far from our particular piece of the shoreline there. And you know, these kids were saying to us, where is this trash coming from? And most importantly, what are you doing about it? So it was 29 years ago this April that we started the Potomac River Watershed Cleanup with just 50 people. You talk about impact and how things grow over time. So we have 65% of our sites reporting right now, and we have over 6,000 people at nearly 300 sites who have picked up more than 250,000 pounds of trash.
Wow.
And that's just right here in our area. And to think we've been doing that for 29 years. The idea is that you get rid of the legacy trash, that you have these pieces of the puzzle that fit together. So you look at policy, you look at regulation, you look at the most important thing, education, you look at enforcement, and you look at market incentives, and sort of how do you get people engaged in the discussion. And one of the things is for them to understand the impact of their trash. I love that you guys, what an amazing thing that your Ocean Council did. We gotta talk
It was
after
fantastic,
this.
yes, for sure.
Because one of the things that we have the opportunity to do is help people to understand the impact of their actions, particularly around trash.
Yeah, speaking of which, you cluttered up my studio.
Yes, I have.
What's with all the trash, Lori?
What is with all the trash?
What is with
right,
all the
Kate?
trash?
So I think, like with most things, we would probably say that the benefit of, understanding the impact of your actions is really potent with trash. So we have an activity that we do with both children and adults. We just did this recently with a group of leaders in Washington, Leadership Greater Washington, and it was really fun. They got really into it, like it's super competitive. It was great fun. So we have a variety of different types of trash. These are things that you might see, any given day or time out in the watershed. Unfortunately, when trash is in our communities, it gets in our waterways, and then ultimately gets into our ocean, which is not exactly sure when trash becomes marine debris, but somewhere there's a barrier out there, right? So ladies, do you want to help me kind of figure this out? So how would you like to tackle this? We've got all sorts of things. We have everything from a diaper to a piece of styrofoam from an egg carton to other things that you might see. So where do you want to start? Beginning to end? What decomposes the fastest?
I find the tin can fascinating because you don't think of that as something that can decompose very easily.
And you're right, it doesn't necessarily decompose very easily. So tin cans and aluminum cans actually have an interesting relationship with each other. Which one do you think decomposes quicker? Hard to say.
Hard
right?
to say.
Yeah. So it's actually the tin can, believe it or not.
Really?
And it's through the natural breakdown of rust. So there's just all these things, like these natural processes that we don't really think about. And aluminum doesn't really rust. An interesting relationship between the plastic and the aluminum can Aluminum, if you have your choice, choose aluminum, because aluminum, when it's recycled, gets back into the onto the shelves a lot quicker than plastic does. So just one of those things to keep in mind. So I know we don't have a ton of time, so I would just say that things that are natural, like an orange peel, newspaper. What is newspaper made out of? It's a natural substance. We might not remember that, but it is in fact trees. Similarly, cardboard. So all of these things have just a few weeks up to hundreds of years on the tail end.
But Lori, we're I think 4 out of the 5 of us are mothers.
Yes.
And I was always taught that diapers take hundreds of years to decompose. So tell me the scoop on the diapers.
So the diaper is really interesting, and I think that they have really reformulated diapers in an amazing way. And no disrespect to moms who like to use cloth diapers. Go for it, absolutely do it. But these now are an average of like 10 to 20 years to break down, instead of like the hundreds of years that we thought. But be careful when you buy them.
A little better.
Yeah, right?
Not a lot, a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Great.
So,
So Alexis, I know you didn't bring any trash, but how does the Ocean Foundation balance local and global conservation efforts?
Well, it's a question that I'm sure all of us have had to address. And the Ocean Foundation is a community foundation, but our community isn't a city or a beach, it's the ocean. And the ocean is at once global, it covers 71% of our planet, but it's also local because we all have our own local experiences with the ocean. So inherent in our mission is the need to act locally and globally. And we do it by balancing within programs, let's say a program on marine debris or ocean acidification. We have local aspects, for example, beach cleanups or specific local policy engagement, or global aspects like engaging with UN processes. But then we also designed our foundation to sort of serve as an incubator for people around the world. We host over 50 projects, and these projects are basically people who are doing work, typically grassroots, all over the world, and they don't necessarily have the resources to start their own nonprofit, so they apply to become part of the Ocean Foundation, and then they kind of are integrated. And a lot of the really great grassroots work happening within the Ocean Foundation comes from our projects.
Yeah, I think that's what's important for people to understand, is that anything that they do in their backyard, anything, will end up in the ocean, which is one ocean and goes all over the globe. So that's why I think it's so important that these local efforts then are articulated for the nation and the world. So how about Earth Echo? I know that you also have a program that you do that balances local and global. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
Yep, we have a couple of those. One is Earth Echo Expeditions, and the second is the Earth Echo Water Challenge, which was formerly the World Water Monitoring Challenge. And that program's been around about 13 years and was started by the EPA. We took it over a couple of years ago. And the idea is very simple. It's to get young people out there, or anybody, it doesn't have to be a young person, testing the quality of the water in their community around 4 really simple parameters and a really simple colorimetric test kit, right? But the interesting thing is then you have the opportunity to load that information up, what you find, load the data up into a map that shows different pieces of information from around the world. And we have data from well over 27 countries in the most recent report that we did. So you can really see how, testing information or whatever you find in one community, how that relates to what you may find. There's an example of the map. Those are all of the data points that have been reported. Yes. Oh, it's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that program is funded by Xylem. It's also a great opportunity for corporations to get involved with schools in their areas through employee engagement opportunities. So that's a perfect example.
Cool.
And Expeditions is the other one.
Okay. So Sarah, under your leadership, the Healthy Oceans Coalition supported the movement that created the National Ocean Policy. First off, can you explain to us what the National Ocean Policy is?
Yes. So the National Ocean Policy is our nation's first and only stewardship policy to protect, maintain, and restore our ocean, coasts, and Great Lakes. It's a directive to the federal government to say, there are over 140 laws and regulations on the books for how our federal government is meant to protect and manage these incredible resources that we're all talking about today and this week at CHOW. and to say, you know, this is going to be the policy of the government when we implement our statutory and regulatory authorities. So it's really a way to say there's so many fingers in the pie, right, of how we protect and restore these resources. So let's make sure we're all on the same page. So it's an incredible thing that our country has had over the last 7 years. It was created in 2010 by President Obama by executive order, and it creates these 9 priority objectives for the federal government to focus on, from marine spatial planning all the way to ocean and coastal resilience efforts.
So how do you go from ocean planning and conservation happening at the local level to recognition at the national level?
Yeah, well, so that's a great question. What I really like about the National Ocean Policy is, even though it is this directive for the federal government in its responsibility, it brings in the local and the regional, especially through the process of marine spatial planning. And so it allows regions to come together, the states, the tribes, the agencies to come together with stakeholders like, you know, me as a conservationist, recreational fishermen, commercial fishermen, a whole host of people, to say, you know, these are the issues that are important to us as a region, which, you know, they may be different for, say, the Pacific Islands than they are for the Mid-Atlantic. And they get a chance to decide what's right for them, but then meet the federal government sort of halfway to say, like you were talking about, how it's local and global at the same time. It's local and state and federal at the same time as well.
Right.
So, and then the Healthy Oceans perspective, we are this network of smaller nonprofits around the country. And so we try and connect those organizations to what's happening at the federal level. Because not everyone has the ability to, you know, staff or pay attention to what's happening along with the federal government. So we try and provide that bridge.
Great. So many of our viewers are oftentimes interested in protecting the ocean and Great Lakes, but they might not know where to start. So what advice would you ladies give them if they wanted to start their own new movement? Lori.
Ooh, that's such a great question. I think it's about understanding the landscape, where you are and where you can make the most difference. And, you know, start a friends group for a national marine sanctuary, for example. How's that for a great idea? Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. There's a new one coming up, hopefully in Malmos Bay.
Yes, in Malmos Bay, yes. Alexis.
Yeah, I think, like Lori said, there's a lot already happening. There's many ways to plug in. I think to get at the local global thing again, personally, my whole kind of path in ocean conservation started with this really strong connection with my local environment and just getting involved with the aquarium or with different volunteer groups in Seattle where I grew up. And then that plugged me into things. So I think it's really just find something interesting in your neighborhood and do it.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, you know, we really try to connect people by what they value, which I think goes to what both of you were saying is, if you can meet people where their interest is, you can really reach a broad audience. And so that's kind of how we try and look at it.
Okay. Mia?
And the same, getting involved locally, understanding about your watershed, and that's where, you know, the challenge comes in so nicely to understand what that means. And get involved with the Youth Leadership Council. They're doing campaigns throughout the year, and that's, I mean, sorry, that's a little bit of plug for Earth Echo, but it's such a great way and a very simple way to get involved.
Very cool. Thanks, ladies, so much for joining me today in the studio. And thank you all for joining me today and discussing how local movements can inspire broader change. The initiatives we've talked about today help prove that you don't have to start with a giant movement to make huge impacts. Has this panel inspired you? Let us know how on Twitter using hashtag #CHOW2017. I also want to extend a special thank you to our signature sponsors, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Vulcan Incorporated, and the Walton Family Foundation, and our co-host sponsors, the Campbell Foundation, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and the Ocean Foundation. Thanks, Alexis. Without their support, the success and accessibility of Capitol Hill Ocean Week would not be possible. We're back to Capitol Hill Ocean Week at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the conclusion of Day 1 with a panel on emerging leaders in ocean science and conservation. Then tonight, we'll don our finest for the Ocean Awards Gala presented by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation also known as the Ocean Prom. The gala honored Representative Suzanne Bonamici with the 2017 Leadership Award, Roger and Vicky Sant with the Lifetime Achievement Award, and Kevin Powers with the Volunteer of the Year Award. This year also introduces the Conservation Innovation Award honoring Environmental Systems Research Institute. Follow the action on Twitter with the hashtag OceanProm and stay tuned for a recap of the gala tomorrow morning on Capitol Hill Ocean Talk. See you tomorrow on marinesanctuary.org/OceansLIVE for the second day of Capitol Hill Ocean Week. Thanks so much for tuning in.